Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. It's Wednesday, April the 24th. We're filming in the beautiful Memorial Arena. And I was just talking to Walter about why the word memorial is so small in our arena signs, and the words save on food are so big and green, you can almost see them from outer space. We won't go there, but I've thought about that for a long time. So this is the Walter and Jack Show. We talk about some of the issues of the day. And I just want to start off by saying that we citizens have got to, at this time, keep our eye on the ball. And we have to remember that with what's going on, both in Boston and here in Canada on Via Rail, we don't really know the various truths or possibilities. We only know, many people only know what the corporate media is telling them. There's another story out there that seems just as authentic as the corporate story, but it's not getting any coverage in the corporate media. So, I mean, it's an old tactic when the difficult times come and the public is getting restless. It's an old tactic for those in power to create war and terror in order to lead us into places where they want us to go. It's just a fact of history. It's done. There's a Canadian author, Gwyn Dyer, who is very highly regarded around the world, I think. He isn't carried much in Canada. They don't allow his columns in. But he wrote a column that I really wish I'd cut out at the time. And he was talking about World War I. And he basically said that the people who ran the world at that time were very afraid that there was a public uprising against them. Things were so bad that citizens around the world were rising against them. And Gwyn Dyer basically said they started World War I in order to solve that problem for themselves. Is it true? I don't know. But again, we've got to look at from A to Z the possibilities. And we Canadians right now have got to keep our eye on the ball. And the ball is, we've lost our democracy. We have got to get our democracy back. We have got to regain a position where what we citizens want counts for something. We've got to build a free media, because I don't think democracy can exist without a media. And then we've got to solve the problems of this growing, our economy is clearly under attack by very powerful forces who are making billions off of us and taking our jobs, sending them overseas, blah, blah, blah. So those are the issues, the environmental issues, the social issues, and the economic issues. Those are what we've got to keep our eye on, and we've just got to keep our eye on those balls and solve them. Not only keep our eye on them, and remember that our government does not work for us and our media doesn't work for us.
Yeah, I agree, Jack. And to me, especially with this new terrorism that's supposed to be going on these days, and there's such a difference between the official story and other narratives, other stories, other witnesses who are coming forward and have different views of what's taken place. And it's going to be very, very hard for us to ever really get to the bottom of it and really figure out, for instance, what happened in the Boston bombing and all that. But what's so important to me is that we should never be afraid to question authority. We should never be afraid to question the activities even of the FBI and the police. Nobody is free from scrutiny, and in order to have the freedoms that we have to remain vigilant. We always have to be able to question authority. And given the activities that we're seeing, like with the federal government right now, with Harper's move forward with bringing forward a bill asking for special powers, much like after the 9/11 events, that will give the police the ability to arrest people without cause, basically, and hold them for as long as they want, almost. Now, that's a huge mistake, and it creates a lot of fear in the public. People tend to clam up and withdraw because they don't know what it all means. This is when it's, to me, when it's even more important that we get out and we challenge these decisions. We do not leave any of these decisions unscrutinized. We can't give up our rights and freedoms because of our fear.
Yeah, big issues that we've got to be successful on, because all of us citizens, I think, are just under assault here by the corporations of the world. I mean, it's happening everywhere, and it's happening here in Canada too. We've got, I mean, it's late innings and very dangerous times. I mean, entire nations are falling before these forces. In Europe, Greece, Spain, Italy. I mean, serious impacts on all of those people, caused by, you'd have to say, the people who run the world. I mean, they're the ones who run these economies. Whose fault is it? I mean, look here in Canada, what they've done to us. The national debt, which was such a big issue back in the early 1990s, was deliberately created under the Mulroney government. Deliberately created. And Statistics Canada wrote a very courageous person at Statistics Canada wrote a report on the cause of the deficit. It was created, but we were told that it was our fault because we were wanting too much. So the government created a debt by tax cuts, exactly what they're doing now. They bring in tax cuts for the richest, tax cuts for the corporation, create deficit and debt. And then when the Liberals came to power, what they did was the biggest cuts to social programs in Canadian history. This was back in the early 90s, followed by another round of the biggest tax cuts in Canadian history. And ever since then, this country, we've been told we can't afford to build infrastructure anymore. We don't have money for our public schools. We don't have money for our healthcare system. And by the way, the healthcare system is run by the pharmaceutical industry completely for their benefit. I don't think healing people, the people who work in the healthcare system are doing their best. But the people who run the system, I don't think that our health is that big an issue for them.
Well, these issues are all connected. That you think about, these international police forces and this international movement to tighten up on freedoms all around the world, and at the same time we're seeing all these austerity measures in a lot of countries that have never seen these sort of things before. England, for instance, is really buckling under the austerity measures that they started out 3 or 4 years ago, by the way. It takes 3 or 4 years to really strangle an economy. And what they're doing is the austerity measures, by tightening their belts and spending less, is shutting the economy down. It's exactly the opposite of what many economists recommend, is that don't withdraw. For instance, you should go back and take a look at your mistakes, taxation mistakes, and basically we should go back to a fairer system where Seth Klein was just on the Voice of BC last week telling Vaughn Palmer that, if we were just the average, if we just taxed British Columbian corporations, just the average of what the taxation level is in Canada, we'd end up with a few $1 billion more in our coffers every year. So and that wouldn't have any appreciable impact on business or anything like that. So we have to correct those mistakes. Firstly, you just can't go on like this. And also, you have to realize that you do not take steps as a government to shut down the economy when it needs stimulus and it needs activity. And how money is spent and the way jobs are created can have enormous impacts on society. If you take, for instance, the Run of the River projects, and we're allowing these huge corporations to charge just astronomical fees for this power.
Well, just Run of River projects are kind of dams built on many BC rivers.
That's correct.
The river is diverted into a pipe. The river
Yeah.
in that place basically dries up or almost dries up. They run the water through a pipe to create electricity, and they have guaranteed contracts from us to buy that power for the next 20, 30, or 40 years. at exorbitant costs. We're bankrupting BC Hydro, we're bankrupting ourselves in guaranteed deals for private corporations for power that we don't need, that is damaging our rivers. It's totally insane.
And the thing is, Jack, that money, as I said last week, the other pipe is the pipe that's stuck into our economy that takes the money that's spent. The citizens of British Columbia have to spend all this money to pay for these run-of-the-river projects through hydro fees. That money is taken right out of the country, right out of the province. And that does not stimulate our economy, whereas a lot of other initiatives does stimulate activity. And if you really get into energy conservation programs, retrofitting houses, that creates enormous amount of work, money that's earned and spent several times over in our communities, creates skills and jobs. And so that sort of money spent in those areas is really enormously beneficial. Giving money to large corporations for power that you don't need is exactly the opposite, and is a mistake. And
I don't think these are mistakes. I think these are very deliberately done by people who know exactly what they're doing, and basically they're taking our money and putting it in their pockets.
That's
with
right.
the aid of the politicians who sign the agreements and the media that keeps it all quiet so the public never hears what's going on. If we want to deal with employment and poverty issues in this country, then Canada should immediately start to get out of all the free trade deals we're in. Why would we sign agreements that basically guarantee that all our jobs are going to be flowing offshore?
Yeah.
I mean, who benefits from that? And the only beneficiary I can really think of are the corporations who want these free trade deals because they sure make a lot of money from them. They control the politicians, so the deals are signed. They control the media, which tells us the deals are great. Harper is running around the world. He can't sign these agreements fast enough. I mean, what kind of corrupt, undemocratic political leadership do we have in this country when it seems to be working against our interests? Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe, the economy around the world is in such great shape after these free trade deals that, hey, things are wonderful. Well, things aren't wonderful. And it's the same here in Canada. What is around us, everything that's around us, economically, speaking of the economy, our society, and the environment, is what they have done. And it's leading us on a road to doom and disaster, unless I'm very mistaken.
I don't think you're too mistaken. We've been lucky in Canada, and we've withstood some of the worst battering. Like recently, with this new development with the new refinery that they want to build in northern BC, that David Black is promoting and all that. The deal that they have, the memorandum of agreement that they have, is with the Chinese government. $25 billion, guaranteeing of the loan or investment. The thing is that what's the only thing that's more frightening than signing bad deals with corporations is signing bad deals with massive governments, because they have different interests than corporations. It's not just financial. And the Chinese government has huge interests in securing energy contracts in the long term. And getting involved with signing long-term contracts with the Chinese government can be very, very problematic, and it could be very threatening for Canadian sovereignty to get too far down that road. And I think rushing into this one would be a huge mistake.
Well, again, not a mistake for us citizens, probably.
Yeah.
But certainly not for the people who run this country. For them, it's exactly what they want, or they wouldn't be doing it. Our governments wouldn't be doing it. We're in late innings and in very dangerous waters, I think. We are being, all I really want politically is for the public to have a voice, to have an educated public on the issues, and the governments find out what people want and try to move things in those directions. I would settle for that. I'd be very happy with that. That's more, I mean, I don't expect perfect democracy, but I expect more. I mean, our democracy is totally gone. I mean, this provincial election that's being run now, I feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland world. Just like the real issue is, who do the Liberals and the NDP really work for? I mean, that's the real issue, and I don't think they work for us citizens. I think both are controlled by big business, and the parties fear big business because big business owns the media, and the media, even at this point in time, I'm sure they could, if the NDP thinks they're going to win this election, they could still shake that up, even with only 2 or 3 weeks to go, and they could certainly finish off Adrian Dix, as I said last week, you know, if they wanted to, or any politician, and he doesn't want that, so you have to toe the line, the corporate line, and it's leading us all into disaster.
Well, you know, Adrian made a couple of promises today about he's entertaining the idea of selling BC Place. Now that they've put a $550 million roof on the joint, it's worth a lot more money. But BC Place is over $1 billion in debt, and this is the standard model. Run a provincial asset or government asset into the ground, get it really in debt, and then tell the public, we just have to sell this off because it's just not working for us. And somebody picks up a building like that in a fire sale price, and that's just, it goes on and on. The governments tend to do that in British Columbia, and it's really too bad.
It really is too bad. I'm still planning not to vote. I mean, I would never consider voting Liberal. I mean, I'm just absolutely not there. I grew up in a family that was NDP, so I supported the NDP my whole life, even when I was in the Green Party, you know, it was sort of Green NDP, and now I'm a member of the NDP, but it's like Green NDP, you know. I'm a member of the NDP, but all I get from them is a never-ending kind of flow of emails and letters asking for money. I don't think they've ever sent me a letter, and I'm going after the NDP here, but the Liberals are equally bad. You know, they're political parties. This is what they do. I don't fault one more than the other, and maybe I don't fault either of them. But the problem is, we've allowed a system to be created that doesn't work for us.
Well, it doesn't really work. I mean, look at how these leaders of these parties are picked. You know, not very democratic sort of circumstances in which these leaders are picked. These leaders become the premier. They dictate to their party the agenda. So it's not very democratic from the get-go on how the system works, and it's really not fair to the public because we're not given a lot of options on any of the major issues. And you know, smart meters has always been to democratize the province and allow the public to have a say in smart meters. The only way to do that would be by have a referendum, and that's been shown right now, where the NDP has gotten thousands and thousands of letters and concerns and complaints about how the program was implemented, but it's not even on the radar during the election campaign. They're pretending like it's not an issue. And for me, that would be, okay, they've just tossed my vote out. They decided they don't want my vote.
And I say it goes right back to, who are they working for? I mean, are they trying to represent the interests of the public, or are they being forced to work for whoever is behind this whole smart meters project, which is, I mean, it's a worldwide technology change being pushed by somebody, certainly not our provincial government. They're just doing as they've been told. And the NDP will do the same because they have to. And it's because we, the people, have become completely powerless in our own country. We're kind of irrelevant.
Well, but it's also that our members of the legislature, who should be putting Adrian and John Horgan's feet to the fire on these policy decisions, are cowed by them, that simply dare not criticize possibly the new premier. They all want to get in a cabinet position. They all know how to toe the party line.
So the premier is given all the power, and that
Yeah.
means that everybody has to kowtow to the premier. It's completely undemocratic. Our system
Yeah,
is undemocratic.
it's terribly flawed.
Yeah, the whole system is flawed. So what we've talked about a few times on this show is a citizens' assembly on democratic reform in British Columbia and in Canada. We need the media to start talking about democracy, teaching us about democracy, telling us about democracy, but they won't. And we need our politicians to start talking about democracy. Bob Simpson did recently. I hope he wins his seat again in this election. We got a minute left.
Well, there's a lot of good people running for office. I'm soured by it. I look at the same old stuff happening during this campaign. It's very boring for me to watch it happen. Nothing new here. There's a changing of the guard. We're going to go from one dictatorship to another dictatorship. As you say, it might be the same dictatorship. It's not good for the province. We need real criticism happening here. We need real progressive policies being brought forward, and we're just not seeing that happening. And we're going to suffer the consequences of that in the long term.
So it's up to us to move forward. I mean, all of us individually. I think the road ahead is hopefully democracy and media. Thank you for watching the Walter and Jack Show on Wednesday, April the 24th. Thank you, Walter.